let's start with 2015 paper 1 section B. Now most of the questions were direct, some of them were really confusing, so we'll work on those mainly. Now this is a direct question that talks about welfare approach. We have covered this in the lecture. The next question talks about energy mix is a step towards sustainability, discuss. So here what's important to understand and explain is how we require renewable resources as well as non-renewable resources to maintain the energy for our future generations. So if we are only dependent on non-renewable resources like oil and petroleum, they would exhaust in a couple of years, and after that couple of decades, and after that there would be problems for the future generations. As a result, we must use renewable resources. So you should mention examples of electric cars, hybrid cars that are coming in. You have solar cells, solar lighting for the rural areas, and projects like those that should be promoted, and that would be a real step towards sustainability. Next question is Nelson's method for classification of town. Now Nelson propounded a method which divided region into 9 activity groups. The main focus was industrial population. He totally ignored the agricultural population. His main idea was quantitative analysis, and his quantitative analysis was rotated in and around solely the standard deviation. So he said if the city is not under one standard deviation, that means that the city is highly diversified in nature. And the 9 groups that he divided for the purpose was manufacturing, retail, professional services, transportation, personal services, public administration, wholesale trade, financial, insurance, and real estate and mining. So these were the categories under which he divided, and he said there should be a city, the city should have around 2 to 3 standard deviation that should come up. If it is less than that, the city would be highly diverse. The next is the Marx view on population is more humanistic. So we have discussed about Marx view in detail in this lecture, you can refer that. The next question is developmental planning has a component of environmental cost. Now this is again a tricky question. What is asked here is when we are doing planning for development, it's definitely affecting the environment. For example, let's take example of Indira Gandhi Canal or any canal construction that has taken place. So it is definitely affecting the local environment and the local region, but there were negative drawbacks or demerits that were seen for canal construction. Specifically if we talk about Indira Gandhi Canal, there were problems of salinization and waterlogging. Then you have problems of creation of dam. You have problems related to seismic hazard. You could feel regions with active earthquakes in the region. Also there would be problems related to rehabilitation that would have to bear onto the economic cost. So before any project is started, it's important that a cost benefit analysis is conducted, and only after a accurate cost benefit analysis the project should be moved forward. The same happens in the case of mining activities. So all the mining activities in the surrounding region is affected. And finally carbon trading, which is a kind of exchange of carbon in terms of the economic activities, is also a kind of bearing to the environmental cost. The next is regional synthesis is the crux of geographical studies. So it's important to understand the ideas that were given by Berry, and he talked about a kind of matrix arrangement, and when he was explaining the matrix arrangement, he said you have the temporal and the spatial phenomena that go line in line, and it's through the various time periods as well as the various regions that you study a certain development. So you talk about spatial distribution, you talk about the arrangement, its integration and interaction with the organisms and the spatial processes in the region. The next is man-induced famines are becoming more common than nature-induced famines. Now this was one of the recent ideas that were laid down by Amartya Sen, and he talked about these ideas under his welfare approach, where he said he jotted down few of the famines in the world. For example, he said Somalia famine was mainly due to improper distribution system. The food distribution system was not proper. He said the Great Famine of Ireland was attributed to the reason that food was shipped from Ireland to England, and that was the only reason for that was because England was able to pay much higher prices for the food products. So there was a famine that happened in Ireland. Similarly, in Ukraine, which was known as the Holodomor famine, it was mainly the food that was shipped by Stalin from Italy to Belgium, France and Germany, and the population of Ukraine was kept starving. So it has a kind of political motivation that could be said. There is creation of artificial poverty that occurs, distribution of food resources if it's not proper, there is imbalance of population and food supply. So these are the reasons where we say there is a kind of man-induced famine that is more common as compared to the nature-induced famine, and this is indeed a very important question. The next is critically examine the theories of population migration. We have covered nearly 10 theories in this lecture, so you can just refer those. Relevance of von Thunen model in recent contemporary world, again we have covered that in this lecture, you can refer those. Now this question is again a kind of tricky question. You need to understand cultural regions are the most suited units to study the diversity of the area. Now when we talk about regional development or regional analysis, we can say we can classify regions either on the basis of agriculture, industrial development, mining activities, cultural activities are some of the areas, broad areas where you can define the region. So if I say, for example, define a region based on agriculture, I would not be able to capture the diversity of the region. The diversity can only and only be captured if I demarcate the cultural boundaries for the region. For example, if I say the northeast region or the northeast cultural zone, so India has the various cultural zones and you have the various centers for the cultural zone development. So that should again be the part of this answer. So if we say, for example, the northeast cultural zone, I can say it's a kind of land of numerous tribes. So you have numerous tribes that are there, numerous tribal languages and the state languages that exist in that region. So there is a kind of numerous diversity in the way people live, the housing features, the dressing parameters. So all those should be included under this, and you can take case study from any specific region, say for Northeast or Andamans, and you can explain that in detail. Next question, approach to study the behavioral geography, again a very direct question. The rejuvenation of environmentalism as a paradigm in geographical studies. Again, what you have to mention here is the concept of environmentalism, which we have covered in detail. The next is geographical traits lead to regional imbalances. Now, this is something to understand the idea of determinism per se. So, when I am saying geographical traits, I am saying there can be landslide in a certain region, for example the recent examples of Uttarakhand landslides. So that landslide had led to regional imbalance. I can say because of the landslide prone area, the development activities are less. So there is a kind of regional imbalance that exists in the region. So regions prone to earthquake, landslide, flood prone areas, drought prone areas, or the regions with dense forest are some of the areas which have a kind of geographical barrier, which prove as geographical barrier to the regional development. Again, when we are talking about the various theories, for example, let's say about the crystallar theory, we talk about isotropic surface. So most of the models or theories in geography talk about certain assumptions, and those assumptions deal with a kind of homogeneous land system or a kind of isotropic surface, and that is not what is in real world. So those theories could be applicable or could be achieved only when we talk about the real world scenario, where we are talking about or we are taking into account the regional imbalances that really exist on ground. The next question talks about vital statistics are necessary ingredient for development planning. Now vital statistics deals with the deaths, the number of live births, number of deaths, the fetal deaths, the infant mortality, life expectancy, the marriages and the divorce. So all these kind of are part of the vital statistics, and once we are aware of the vital statistics of a region, we can lead to developmental planning in that region. For example, you have census that comes up every 10 years. So you have census in 2021 again, and if you do not have enough vital statistics for the region, you cannot say how many people are required or how many people would be fed in by this would be required to be fed in this region, or how many people are being added to a certain region X or Y. So once we are aware of the vital statistics, we can develop the options for employment, we can develop the options for more growth options, more educational options, we can provide medical facilities in proportion to the amount of people or the number of people that are into the region. Also, we must include the important statistics under vital statistics. Besides vital statistics would be the data on migration. So it would definitely lead to ideas of social security and political stability. So with this we cover the 2015 paper 1 section B. We will be taking more classes related to GS before the upcoming mains. You can subscribe to our channel for further details. Have a good day ahead.